In the 16th century, when Europe trembled with religious wars, when kings clawed at one another for thrones, and when the Mediterranean was a cauldron of shifting empires, there rose a ruler whose very name commanded awe. To Christians, he was the terrible Turk, the unstoppable force at the gates of Vienna. To Muslims, he was Kanuni the lawgiver who perfected the justice of empire. To the world, he became Suleiman the Magnificent, the greatest Sultan of the Ottoman dynasty, whose reign stretched across half the known world. For nearly half a century, 1520 to 1566, he ruled not merely as a king of men, but as a symbol of majesty itself. His empire reached from the deserts of Arabia to the walls of Vienna, from the Nile to the Balkans, from the Indian Ocean to the gates of Gibraltar. His court glittered with jewels and poets, his armies thundered like storms, and his laws carved order into chaos. Yet behind the magnificence lay a man of passion, torn between the weight of empire and the desires of his heart, a man whose legacy was both golden and tragic. This is his story. Suleiman was born in Trabzon on the Black Sea in 1494, the only son of Kezade Selim, the fierce prince who would become Sultan Selim the First. The grim, young Suleiman grew up amid war and expansion. His father, ruthless and determined, doubled the empire's size, conquering the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt and bringing the holy cities of Mecca and Medina under Ottoman rule. Educated in the arts of statecraft, military strategy, theology, and poetry, the boy showed brilliance from an early age. He devoured the Persian epics of kings and warriors, the Quran, and the philosophy of justice. He could wield a sword with skill, but also a pen with elegance. At 26 years old, in September 1520, the sudden death of Selim the First thrust Suleiman onto the throne. The world watched, expecting this young, untested man to falter under the burden of an empire that stretched across 3 continents. They were wrong. Suleiman's reign began with thunder. His ambition was not survival, but glory. The siege of Belgrade, 1521, his first campaign, was against Belgrade, the fortress city guarding Hungary and Central Europe. The city had withstood Ottoman armies for decades, but under Suleiman, it fell in 1521, opening the gates of Europe. The fall of Rhodes, 1522. Next came Rhodes, the island stronghold of the Knights Hospitaller, who had harassed Ottoman shipping for years. After a brutal 6-month siege, the Knights surrendered in 1522, allowed to depart with honor. The Mediterranean now bowed to the crescent flag. The Battle of Mohács, 1526, but it was in Hungary that Suleiman carved his name into eternity. In 1526, at the Battle of Mohács, he faced the young King Louis II of Hungary. In a devastating, swift victory, Louis and much of Hungary's nobility were annihilated. Hungary collapsed, and the Ottomans stood at the doorstep of Vienna itself. Europe shuddered. The Pope called for unity. Emperors and kings muttered of crusade. The first siege of Vienna, 1529. 3 years later, in 1529, Suleiman marched with 120,000 men to the walls of Vienna. Cannons roared, trenches were dug, and the Habsburg capital nearly fell. But heavy rains, supply shortages, and stubborn resistance forced the Ottomans to withdraw. Though Vienna stood, the message was clear. The Ottomans were no longer a distant Eastern empire, they were Europe's greatest threat. Suleiman was not only a master of land campaigns, he ruled the seas. Under his command, the Ottoman navy became supreme in the Mediterranean. His admiral, the legendary Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, crushed Christian fleets and made the Ottomans masters of the waves. In 1538, at the Battle of Preveza, Barbarossa decisively defeated the combined fleets of Venice, Spain, and the papacy. From then on, the Mediterranean became, as the saying went, an Ottoman lake. Yet Suleiman's greatness was not only measured in conquest. He was called Kanuni, the lawgiver, because he reformed the empire's laws with wisdom and fairness. He harmonized Islamic Sharia law with secular common imperial decrees, ensuring justice for Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike. Property rights, taxation, criminal codes, and trade laws were organized into a system admired even in Europe. Under him, the empire flourished with stability. Merchants thrived, art bloomed, and scholars flourished. Istanbul became a glittering jewel, the crossroads of the world. Unlike many conquerors, Suleiman had the heart of a poet. Writing under the pen name Mehibi, the lover, he composed verses of longing, faith, and devotion. But his greatest poem was not written in ink, it was written in love. At the heart of his court was a woman who changed the course of Ottoman history, Hurrem Sultan, known in the West as Roxolana. A slave girl of Ruthenian origin, she rose from the harem to become Suleiman's legal wife and queen. This was unprecedented. Ottoman sultans traditionally kept concubines, but Hurrem won Suleiman's heart entirely. She bore him children, advised him in politics, and built charitable foundations across the empire. Their love letters survive, filled with tenderness rarely seen in royal correspondence, but her rise caused envy and intrigue. Court factions split between Hurrem's children and those of other concubines, setting the stage for one of Suleiman's darkest chapters. The greatest sorrow of Suleiman's reign was not on the battlefield, but in his own family. His eldest son, Mustafa, born of another concubine, was beloved by the army and admired as a capable leader. Many expected him to succeed Suleiman, but whispers and intrigues, some say fueled by Hurrem and her ally, Grand Vizier Rustam Pasha, poisoned Suleiman's mind. He came to believe Mustafa was plotting against him. In 1553, during a campaign in Anatolia, Suleiman summoned Mustafa to his tent. There, in a moment that shocked the empire, the beloved prince was strangled by the Sultan's order. The empire mourned, soldiers wept. Suleiman, though unshaken in public, carried the guilt of that decision until his death. The path of succession shifted to Hurrem's sons, but not without further bloodshed among brothers. The seeds of dynastic decline were sown in those tragic moments. Even in old age, Suleiman's ambition did not wane. In 1566, at the age of 72, he marched once more at the head of his army. This time against Hungary in the siege of Sigetva. The fortress was fiercely defended by the Croatian noble Nicholas Rimsky. As cannons roared and trenches filled with blood, Suleiman's health failed. On September 6, 1566, the great Sultan died in his tent. His passing kept secret until victory was secured. The empire mourned its greatest ruler. He was buried in Istanbul, beside the woman he loved, Hurrem Sultan, in the magnificent Suleimani Mosque, a masterpiece of architecture that still crowns the city's skyline. Suleiman's reign lasted 46 years, the longest in Ottoman history. Under him, the empire reached its zenith politically, militarily, economically, and culturally. He expanded Ottoman lands to their greatest extent. He made Istanbul a center of art, law, and architecture. He forged a legacy of justice, remembered by Muslims and admired even by enemies. He embodied both warrior and poet, conqueror and lover, yet his story is not only of triumph. It is also of tragedy, of a father who ordered the death of his own son, of an empire whose very magnificence sowed the seeds of future struggles. When Europeans looked east, they saw Suleiman as the shadow looming over Christendom. When Ottomans looked inward, they saw him as the lawgiver, the just ruler who brought order. To history, he remains what his people called him, Suleiman the Magnificent, a conqueror greater than kings, a lawgiver who ruled with justice, a poet whose heart beat for love, a man whose name still echoes across centuries.